What if I told you that one single strike of the ball wasn't just worth 3 points, or even a league title, but billions of dollars? In the final seconds of a match that seemed lost, Sergio Agüero didn't just win Manchester City their first league in decades. He lit the fuse for a dynasty that would reshape football forever. The final day of the 2011-12 Premier League season wasn't just another match. It was a story that felt like it was written for the history books. Manchester City, a club that had lived in the shadows of their rivals for decades, stood just 90 minutes away from rewriting their destiny. All they needed was a win against Queen's Park Rangers. Simple on paper, but football has a way of testing even the strongest dreams. As the game unfolded, that dream began to crumble. QPR, a team fighting relegation, refused to play the victim. By the 90th minute, the score was locked at 2-2 and City's title hopes were hanging by a thread. Over at Sunderland, United had already finished their game. Sir Alex Ferguson's men believed they had done enough, waiting for confirmation that the trophy was theirs. For City, the weight of 44 years without a league title pressed down on every player, every fan, every second that ticked away. And then came the moment that would echo through time. Deep into stoppage time, with the stadium holding its breath, Mario Balotelli, who hadn't even started the match, slid the ball to Sergio Agüero. In one explosive movement, Agüero darted past a defender and smashed the ball into the net. The Etihad erupted into chaos. Fans screamed, commentators lost their voices, and across the city, celebrations and heartbreak unfolded in the same breath. But what no one realized in that exact second was this: Agüero's strike wasn't just the winning goal of a football match. It was the spark that would ignite a billion-dollar empire, a single kick that turned Manchester City from hopeful challengers into the foundation of a modern dynasty. When Agüero's shot ripped into the back of the net, it wasn't just a goal, it was an explosion. For a heartbeat, the Etihad froze. Fans stared in disbelief, mouths open, hands on their heads, as if their brains needed a few extra seconds to accept the impossible. And then it hit. The roar that followed wasn't just noise, it was thunder, a sound that shook the stadium, the city, and even the sport itself. Grown men wept openly in the stands. Strangers threw themselves into each other's arms, toppling over rows of seats in uncontrollable joy. Kids who had never seen City win anything before suddenly felt like they were witnessing a miracle written just for them. It wasn't celebration, it was catharsis. Decades of pain and frustration released in one unstoppable surge of euphoria. On the pitch, chaos reigned. Players sprinted in every direction, some collapsing to the turf, others screaming into the sky. Joe Hart, the goalkeeper, ran the length of the field just to dive into the pile of bodies celebrating with Agüero. Mario Balotelli, who had provided the decisive assist, was swarmed by teammates despite looking like he could barely stand. And Agüero himself tore off his shirt, spinning in circles as though even he couldn't believe what he had just done. The commentary only amplified the moment. Martin Tyler's legendary scream, "Agüero," pierced through television screens around the world, instantly immortalizing the goal in football history. It wasn't analysis, it wasn't measured, it was pure, unfiltered emotion, the kind of call that still sends chills down the spine more than a decade later. But underneath the chaos, something even bigger was happening. For decades, Manchester City had been mocked as the noisy neighbors, the club destined to live in Manchester United's shadow. They were the punchline, the underdogs, the team that always found a way to fall short. In that single instant, all of it evaporated. Agüero's strike shattered the stigma, burying 44 years of disappointment under the weight of one unforgettable moment. And while for the fans it was the end of a long, painful journey, for the owners it was the opposite. It was the beginning. Watching from above, Sheikh Mansour and the City hierarchy saw more than just a ball in the net. They saw validation. The hundreds of millions invested in players, staff, and infrastructure had just been justified in the most dramatic way possible. This wasn't just about football glory anymore. It was about building something that could dominate the future. The emotion of that night was unforgettable, but the ripple effects of that goal would prove even bigger than anyone inside the Etihad could have imagined. That single swing of Agüero's right foot didn't just end a game, it flipped an entire narrative. Before that night, Manchester City were seen by many as a rich man's toy, a project fueled by oil money and expensive signings, but lacking the history, credibility, and winning DNA to be taken seriously. Rivals mocked them, pundits questioned them, and even some fans wondered if the dream was just too fragile to survive. But in one instant, all of those doubts disappeared. That goal was more than a title, it was proof. Proof that Sheikh Mansour's billions weren't wasted, proof that the vision of building a new super club wasn't fantasy, and proof that City could stand shoulder to shoulder with the giants of world football. And the impact was immediate. Sponsors who had been hesitant suddenly wanted their names tied to this rising force. Etihad doubled down on its partnership, transforming the stadium, training ground, and even the shirts into a billboard for global exposure. Other brands followed, eager to link themselves with the club that had just delivered one of the most iconic moments in sports history. For the players, the message was clear. Manchester City wasn't just a stepping stone club anymore. They were winners. Suddenly, world-class talents who might have once laughed off the idea of wearing sky blue began to take the phone call seriously. City could now sit at the same table as United, Chelsea, Real Madrid, and Barcelona and be treated as equals. But perhaps the biggest shift was psychological. That goal gave the entire club, from the boardroom to the pitch, unshakable belief. They were no longer chasing relevance. They had seized it, violently and dramatically, in the final seconds of a season, and from that moment on, every trophy, every deal, every superstar signing would carry the weight of that night. Because in football, credibility is everything, and Agüero's 93-20 strike turned Manchester City from a question mark into an exclamation point. But the real transformation was only just beginning. Agüero's goal didn't just deliver a title, it unlocked a floodgate of opportunity. In football, winning changes everything, and for Manchester City, that one moment of triumph was the catalyst that transformed their financial future. Almost overnight, the perception of the club shifted. No longer were they just a project or a billionaire's gamble, they were champions. That word alone carries massive weight in the football business. Sponsors who had hesitated suddenly wanted in. Etihad, already tied to City, expanded its partnership, stamping its name across the stadium, the training complex, and even youth development programs. What had once been a regional airline deal evolved into one of the most lucrative partnerships in the sport. But it didn't stop there. Other global brands began circling. Puma saw the potential of attaching themselves to a club on the rise, and in the years that followed, they signed a kit deal worth hundreds of millions. Corporate giants like Nissan, Cisco, and EA Sports started to appear alongside the sky blue badge, recognizing the value of associating their brand with a club that was suddenly becoming a symbol of dominance and innovation. And then came the players. Winning proved to the world's best that Manchester City was no longer a stepping stone club, it was a destination. The summer transfer windows that followed saw names like Fernandinho, Jesus Navas, and later Kevin De Bruyne and Raheem Sterling, all willing to buy into a vision that looked unstoppable. Without that title, without that proof, many of those transfers might never have happened. The financial ripple stretched even further. City's global fan base grew at record pace. Merchandising exploded, ticket demand surged, and suddenly the club that once struggled to fill seats was selling out matches and building one of the most advanced training facilities in the world. Sheikh Mansour's investment, once seen as reckless spending, was now framed as visionary strategy. Every deal signed, every superstar attracted, every dollar invested, all of it pointed back to that one goal. Because in football, credibility is currency, and Agüero's strike minted Manchester City as one of the richest, most marketable clubs in the world. But while money was pouring in and the brand was exploding, something even bigger was brewing: the foundations of a modern dynasty. After 2012, Manchester City was no longer a dream, it was a machine. That first title wasn't just a trophy for the cabinet, it was a statement to the entire football world. City had arrived, and they weren't leaving. In the years that followed, the club built on that foundation with ruthless precision. They didn't just spend money, they invested in creating a structure built for dominance. Behind the scenes, City modernized every part of the organization, from scouting networks to sports science, ensuring they weren't just keeping up with the traditional giants, but outpacing them. On the pitch, the transformation was just as dramatic. Agüero's goal opened the door for stars to follow, and soon City's squad was filled with names that terrified opponents. Yaya Touré commanding the midfield, David Silva orchestrating attacks, Vincent Kompany leading from the back. Each signing felt like a step closer to something bigger, something lasting. But the true turning point came in 2016, when Pep Guardiola arrived. By then, City wasn't just a club with money, they were a proven winner with the resources and infrastructure to attract the most innovative coach in the modern game. Guardiola didn't just want to manage anywhere, he wanted to manage a project with limitless potential, and City was exactly that. Under Pep, the club evolved into something more than a football team. They became an idea: fast, fluid, relentless football that dominated England like no team before. Titles started to pile up, 6 Premier League championships in just a decade, record-breaking point totals, unbeaten streaks, and a style of play that redefined what dominance looked like in the Premier League. And every new piece of silverware traced back to the spark of 93-20. Without that first taste of victory, without that proof that glory was possible, the dynasty may never have taken shape. But with it, City had the credibility to attract the best players, the best manager, and to build a culture where winning wasn't just hoped for, it was expected. What started as one desperate strike in stoppage time had now snowballed into an era of control, the kind of dominance that reshaped not just a club but the entire balance of power in English football. But City's ambitions didn't end with winning titles at home. The empire was about to go global. Agüero's goal didn't just win a title, it gave City the credibility to go global. Soon after, the club unveiled the City Football Academy, a state-of-the-art hub built to shape the future. But the real power move was the creation of City Football Group, a network of clubs stretching from New York to Melbourne, from Spain to Asia. This wasn't just football, it was branding. City shirts began popping up worldwide, the badge becoming a symbol of modern dominance. With shared talent, scouting, and sponsorships, Manchester City wasn't just competing with clubs anymore, they were competing with empires, and it all traced back to one kick at 93-20. Today, Manchester City isn't just a football club, they're a billion-dollar dynasty. Forbes values the team at over $1 billion, making them one of the most powerful sports organizations on the planet. Every sponsorship, every global fan, every superstar signing can be traced back to that night in 2012. Agüero's goal didn't just win a league, it proved that City could be a global force. It turned investment into validation, dreams into dominance, and a struggling club into one of the richest empires in world football. One strike, one moment that literally changed the value of an entire institution. In football, goals come and go, some forgotten in minutes, others replayed for years. But Sergio Agüero's strike in the 93rd minute wasn't just a goal, it was a spark that lit the fuse for a billion-dollar dynasty. From one desperate kick came a tidal wave of trophies, global expansion, and a transformation that reshaped the balance of power in world football. For Manchester City, it was more than winning a title after 44 years. It was the moment they stopped being underdogs and became an empire. And maybe that's the real lesson of 93-20. Sometimes a single second doesn't just change a match, it changes history.